Hello everyone. Welcome to your lecture. This lecture is a part of your paper on gender, media and society. This lecture will help you understand the area which comprises of women's studies related to feminism, women, politics and gender, and men studies. The role of media and press is understood as a major component for social development. The level of social advancement is often ascertained in terms of the mass culture of that society. The role of press is understood from the normative theories of mass communication. Let us learn about the basics of the normative theories first. Authoritarian theory. This theory suggests that media is not directly under the control of the state and ruling classes, but is expected to respect the lawmakers. In this theory, journalists can be empowered with censorship. Libertarian theory or free press theory. In this theory, the foundation stresses on the basic right of any human being for his freedom of speech and expression. Social responsibility theory. This theory focuses on the need of a responsible press as a preconceived notion on its own. Soviet media theory. This theory lays a stress on the ideology, the ruling class ideas in every period, dominating ideas. Development communication theory. This theory focuses on laying the foundation of development through the means of media content. Democratization theory. This theory of press explains the need of giving the power of media in the hands of laymen or communities for the process of development. These theories explain the media influence on various aspects of everyday life, such as class, religion, gender, etc. Amongst all of these, gender is an important parameter of the social structure. Gender studies is an interdisciplinary discipline which focuses on gender politics as a means of bringing about social change and an egalitarian society. This lecture will help you understand the relationship between women's studies and communication. Media and gender studies, the beginning. We all are aware that mass media is an important part of mass communication. As this lecture deals with women's studies, We will start with the early beginning of feminist movements and the way of communication used at that time. The work of feminists in the field of communication originated during the early 1960s to 70s women's movement. The seminal work of Betty Friedan, The Feminine Mystique, catalyzed women's movement in North America and Western Europe, which assumed a global momentum. Moving on to the period of 1975 to 85, we can say that the period was acknowledged as Women's International Decade by United Nations (UN). It was indeed a political movement well supported by feminist academics and practitioners from different walks of life. Gallagher noted that the media was held for being deeply guilty in the arrangement of bias operating against women in society, arrangements which through the trivialization, absence or conviction of women in media content to their symbolic annihilation. Gallagher also noted that over time, feminist media studies revolved around two main areas. First being a test of structures of ability and domination, whereas second was focusing upon the representational politics and knowledge production, wherein women were seen as objects instead of being active subjects. Feminists turned in communication theory. The need of feminism theory arose as the media was controlled by man and through his vision and ideologies. Women were just his subjects with no independent insights. Mid-1980s was marked by increase in appreciation in media and communication studies, such that it became impossible for communication scholars to ignore the existence of feminist politics and its challenge to the field of communication and media. Thus, 1980s was considered as a feminist turn in communication studies, where the major agenda of interest with media was related to male violence, sexuality, pornography, language as control, verbal harassment, the body, beauty, consumerism, etc. This made feminist theoreticians believe that the personal and individual issues that women face within the confinement of their homes and private life is not just personal but also plays important role in reproduction of unequal power relations in society. This evoked the famous notion of personal is political. Whereas the theory of liberal feminist media has its base in different things, the theory urges that media fails to bring any transformation within society, including women's role within it. Approaching media content through feminism. Looking at the central part of cultural politics in feminism is in analysis of media content and its connotation in gender composition. The debate has gone on since the analysis of content in media, stereotypes, and sex roles, which exemplified feminist scholarship of the 1970s, where quantitative social science methods were favored. In the seminal essay, Visual Pleasure and the Narrative Cinema, Laura Mulvey concluded that inbuilt motifs of contentment and identification in the mainstream narrative film impose masculinity as a point of view. Two particular aspects of Mulvey's argument have preoccupied feminists ever since then. Firstly, her idea that the determining male gaze invites even the female spectator to identify with masculine pleasure and its objectification of the female. Secondly, her call for the analysis of destruction of pleasure to force a break with outworn oppressive forms. Feminist theory perspectives. Liberal feminist theory. Liberal feminist theories claim that media fails to reflect changes in society. When the role of women in society changed after women's movements, media continued to misrepresent women. The liberal feminist theory argues that the status of women in media content is absent or marginalized. The media content is also stereotyped, and portrayal of women often is in darker shades. For example, the women in various films are projected often as negative characters. Radical feminist media theory. The theory of radical feminist media primarily highlights patriarchal ideas, a significant notion, and debates the social arrangement in gender terms. Pornography. This is another important concern of radical feminist media theory. Socialist feminist theory. Now, this theory of socialist feminism is primarily based on the ideas and values of capitalism, ideals of communism, and hugely contesting theories of Marx. Although the theory of Marxist media highlights on the media and elite relationship along with the determinants of economy on production of media and output. The political economy theory of socialist feminist media stresses on elements like the disciplinary role that women should play amidst the capitalist society. This role is essential as able and healthy workers are required in a capitalist society to function properly. Here, media plays an essential part in administering these ideas, and the theorists of socialist feminist media consider that it enables women in this role of nurturing and also authorizes them to perform unpaid labor willingly in their part as mother or housewife. Postmodern feminist media theory. The theory of postmodern feminist media is primarily based on the view of contemporary culture that highlights the general postmodern theory ideas. Since the theory considers cultural shift happened due to postmodernism instead of a transformation in society itself. It aims primarily on the way texts are read by audiences, or if they are distressed by the media, and the amount of control that audiences possess over this. Women culture and mass media. Women in mass media are largely represented in supporting roles compared to male representation. The historical debate over high culture and mass culture has also come into crossroads with feminist media theories. Women rely on television for making meaning of daily life talks and take gains of pleasure and ultimately become passive victims. The content of television is directed on the light of male-centric ideologies, which portray women through men's eye. These theories also argue that the concept of women genre is itself a creation of stereotypical images of women. It's interesting to know and learn how women genre media content is really empowering women. If we observe the shows of Indian television, we can find that 90% of soap operas are made with the director-created women issues. They place women in a domestic status where they encounter problems with family members and values. The few prominent figures who contributed in the field of feminism and media content are Judith Butler, Laura Mulvey, Andrea Lunsford, Ella Baker, Anita Hill, Gay Tushman. Women media producers and media content. The media text by women directors and producers are concentrated on women's empowerment and equal space for women. These media texts often differ from feminist theories, but they have developed their own area from realism, film theories, and the like. Prominent women directors, editors, and producers work towards gender equality and impartiality. Women in such media texts are shown to be independent, strong, and self-motivated. Women and Media, Indian Perspective. In the year 1984, the report of the Joshi Committee observed that the channel Doordarshan is controlled by programs based on films and feature films that abuse the form of the female to rouse and/or via their socially exhaustive approach plainly trivialize and demoralize the womanhood image. The major recommendation of this Joshi Committee report, which made Indian broadcasting channel Doordarshan more vibrant and active in terms of women empowerment and gender equality, improved the condition of women. Image and status. should be ascertained as a primary objective ambition of Doordarshan. The creation of fair guidelines concerning the positive depiction of women on television, a system of monitoring the implementation of these guidelines, the redefinition of the image and the promotion of the male ideal as one who is caring and willing to share in household, child care duties, contraceptive responsibilities is also needed. The need for orientation courses for all Doordarshan policy makers, programming and production staff, so that they are sensitized to the social issues with specific citation to issues of women and their implications in society, etc., is essential. Summing up this lecture, we hope that you've learned the relationship between communication and feminist theories. We learnt about the space of women in media content, the scope of women as media producers, the issues of equality and status of women in media content, the misrepresentation of women in media in this lecture. Hope you enjoyed the lecture. For more details, please read the e-text of this lecture properly and attempt the questions at the end. Thank you.